Normally when I'm opening these Iftar dinners, there's always things that we often talk about in relation to spirituality, in relation to the meanings of Ramadan, the importance of the month of Ramadan for Muslims. And of course we can talk a lot about the spiritual nature of Ramadan and what it teaches us all as human beings. We can also talk about the interfaith dimension of Ramadan, that it opens up spaces for dialogue, it opens up bridges between communities of different faith traditions, of different cultural traditions, and in many cases, communities that would not otherwise be able to come together. We would normally start like that. I find myself more or less compelled to reflect on what's happening in the world nowadays. We thought we had wars, and some of those wars were coming to an end, and all of a sudden new wars have just erupted, which have and will continue to create serious implications for all of us, both here but also internationally. And of course, what challenges me, and I'm sure our exec dean, who is a political scientist, will probably reflect on this, not so much that wars are erupting, but what these wars are telling us about the international order, what they're telling us about the importance of multilateralism in general, the United Nations, and the importance of ensuring that we do not end up living in a world where might becomes right. And I think in many ways we are confronted with this reality increasingly. So, as you can see, I'm not reading from my notes because I always do that. I write some notes and leave them aside and start talking. This is just typical me. But what I thought I wanted to just share briefly with you is, one might ask, why are we in this very critical moment where we are seeing a lot of tensions, a lot of conflicts worldwide? Why are we in Australia, why are we at Deakin specifically, still very keen to hold these Iftar dinners? I remember 2 years ago I told the Vice Chancellor that I wasn't really thinking it was a great idea to have an Iftar dinner given all the conflicts that we had in Gaza, etc. And I remember Ian saying, no, specifically because of what's happening there, we should be holding these events. He said we need to bring people together. So the question that I was asking, given this international context, why do we persist with these events, these interfaith, intercultural events? Are not such activities simply an exercise in preaching to the converts? One might ask, legitimately so too. And so I just jotted down some thoughts on why we should continue to do these things. And one of them is that there is a need now, more than ever, for building even stronger alliances. So us coming here from different sectors of society, from different ethno-religious communities, actually we bring with us whole traditions of care, knowledge, and of values. And I think it's those alliances that we need to keep on sustaining and building, so that we are able to really feed into our society those values that nourish social cohesion, intercultural and interfaith understanding. As you can see, and you look around this room, participants represent communities, governments, media, industry, as well as academia. They are all champions of diversity and social cohesion, who can play a role and are playing a critical role in supporting and spreading the pro-diversity message. When you look at multiculturalism in general, we always categorize it in terms of ideologies that are either pro-diversity, like multiculturalism, cosmopolitanism, etc., interculturalism, or could be anti-diversity, such as assimilationism and such as the ideologies of far-right groups. So what we want here is to ensure that that pro-diversity message is continuing to be spread by those champions who are attached and committed to being part of these activities. And actually that's the ethos of the intercultural approach, which is to bring people together so we can learn from one another, so that the transformation in attitudes takes place. Why? Because you reduce the prejudice that otherwise would have sat into those ways of thinking. So even as such, Iftar dinners are therefore, events such as dinners are therefore crucial in signaling to like-minded fellow Australians, as well to those on the other side of the ideological aisle, what I called earlier the anti-diversity paradigm, that our individual commitment to a collective orientation towards an inclusive and respectful society is as strong as ever. And that together we will continue to breathe new life into the multicultural ethos that has sustained this nation for the last 50 years. So let us take a moment to let that idea sink in. Coming together as we do from diverse backgrounds and sectors, we are renewing this ethical commitment for a citizenship of equality and respect, but also for a culture of ethics, care, and solidarity. And that towards all doesn't distinguish between groups. That is much more than a mere preaching to the convert. And that is why Deakin University, and through the UNESCO Chair for Cultural Diversity and Social Justice, is proud and honored to be hosting this event once again in partnership with the Australian Intercultural Society under the leadership of Ahmed Keskin here and under the auspices of our Vice Chancellor, who, as I said earlier, could not be with us. Of course, we are delighted that Simon will join us here shortly and deliver his welcome on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and the university leadership.